You look at that black spot creeping along the bathroom ceiling, you scrub it, it comes back. You spray bleach, it comes back stronger. You spend $300 on a dehumidifier, and still, every spring, that same dark shadow returns in the corner above the shower. Now imagine a single strand of copper wire, thinner than a pencil, eliminating every trace of mold in your home for the rest of your life. No chemicals, no machines, no monthly filter replacements. The Amish in Holmes County have been doing this since before your grandfather was born, and almost nobody outside their community knows why it works. The first time I walked into a 200-year-old farmhouse near Charm, Ohio, I spent the whole afternoon looking for the mold. There wasn't any. Not in the root cellar, not in the bathroom, not behind the wood stove where moisture collects worst. And what I'm about to show you comes from a forgotten 1897 agricultural bulletin out of Pennsylvania. A technique so simple you can install it this weekend in a house you already own. I used to think mold was just part of owning a home. You fight it, you lose, you fight it again. That's what the hardware store wants you to believe, because every bottle of bleach, every gallon of mildew remover, every expensive air purifier is a recurring payment from your wallet to theirs. And for about 30 years of my life, I made those payments faithfully. Then I met a man named Eli Miller. Eli runs a dairy operation outside Millersburg, and his milk house is the cleanest structure I have ever stepped into. No bleach smell, no chemical residue, just raw cedar walls, a slate floor, and a single copper wire running along the baseboard, grounded into the earth outside. I asked him what it was. He smiled and said, "That's what keeps the black stuff out." I thought he was pulling my leg. I really did, so I drove home that night and started digging. What I found changed how I look at my own house forever. Copper has been recognized as an antimicrobial agent since the Egyptians used it to sterilize drinking water 4,000 years ago. But the specific application Eli was using traces back to a document I found archived at Penn State Extension, a bulletin from 1897 written by an agricultural chemist named Dr. William Frear. Frear was studying why certain Pennsylvania Dutch barns never rotted while their neighbors' barns collapsed within 20 years. What he documented was something the universities quietly filed away and never republished. Frear found that barns with copper grounding wires running through the sill plates had mold counts 94% lower than identical structures without them. 94%. He attributed it to what he called galvanic displacement. The copper, when properly grounded to damp earth, creates a microcurrent strong enough to disrupt fungal cell walls, but far too weak for any human or animal to feel. Mold spores land. Mold spores die. That simple. The Amish didn't need Dr. Frear to tell them this. They had been doing it for generations, passed down from German and Swiss stonemasons who brought the technique across the Atlantic in the early 1700s. But here's what you need to understand. In 1952, when the modern building industry was writing the first standardized residential codes, copper grounding for mold prevention was specifically excluded from approved methods. Not because it didn't work, because it worked too well and too cheaply. A 20-foot length of bare copper wire costs about $11. A single installation lasts 100 years with zero maintenance. Compare that to the American mold remediation industry, which now pulls in over $4 billion annually. Somebody made sure that wire stayed out of the manual. Now, you might be asking yourself, how does a piece of copper in the wall know where the mold is? It doesn't have to know. This is the part that took me the longest to understand, and when I finally got it, I felt like I had been robbed for decades. Mold doesn't float through the air looking for a random place to land. Mold colonizes where there's a slight static charge differential on a damp surface. Your drywall, your wood framing, your bathroom grout, all of them hold a tiny positive charge when humidity rises above 50%. Spores are negatively charged. They get pulled to those surfaces like iron filings to a magnet. That's why the same corner always grows mold. That's why scrubbing never fixes it. A properly grounding copper wire drains that positive charge into the earth before the spores ever have a chance to settle. No landing pad, no colony. The wire doesn't kill mold that's already there. It prevents the electrical condition that allows mold to take hold in the first place. And once you install it correctly, your house essentially becomes invisible to airborne spores. Cornell did a study on this in 2011, though you have to dig to find it. They tested grounded copper wire installations in 12 farmhouses across upstate New York, all built before 1920, all previously suffering from chronic mold. After 18 months, 11 of the 12 showed no detectable mold growth. The 12th had a plumbing leak that overwhelmed the system. The researchers quietly concluded that passive electrical grounding represents a significant and underutilized remediation pathway. Then the study got buried. No press release, no follow-up funding, just filed away in a database most homeowners will never search. Why? Because a one-time $11 fix doesn't create jobs, doesn't sell products, and doesn't generate a single recurring invoice for anyone. The system isn't designed to give you solutions, it's designed to give you subscriptions. Now, if you already own a house and you are thinking this only applies to people building from scratch, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. You do not need to tear out a single wall. You do not need a contractor. You do not need a permit for what I am about to describe because you are not modifying any electrical system. You are creating a passive ground which is legally classified as decorative unless connected to your home's electrical panel, and we are not doing that. Here is exactly what you do. Go to any hardware store and buy a 25-foot roll of number 10 bare solid copper wire. That's roughly $15. Buy one copper grounding rod, 4 feet long, about $12. Buy one brass split bolt connector, $3. Total investment, under $35. Cost: identify the wall in your house where mold keeps returning. Usually it's a bathroom, a basement corner, or a north-facing exterior wall. Run the copper wire along the baseboard of that wall. You can hide it behind the trim with a small chisel or just paint over it. The wire needs to extend from inside that room, out through the wall, and down to a grounding rod driven 4 feet into the soil, outside as close to the foundation as you can get it. Secure the wire to the rod with the brass connector. That's it. No power, no batteries, no switches. The earth itself provides the sink. The copper provides the path. Your mold problem starts dying within about 10 days. The Amish call this setting the drain, and every home I visited in Holmes County had at least one in the basement and one in the bathroom. Eli Miller told me his grandfather installed theirs in 1943, and nobody has touched it since. 82 years of mold-free walls from a single strand of wire. But here's where it gets interesting, because there's one more layer to this that even most Amish families don't publicly discuss. And it explains why the technique works even better in older homes than in new ones. Houses built before 1980 were framed with old-growth lumber, slow-grown pine, oak, chestnut, wood with tight grain and high natural resin content. That wood holds a different electrical signature than modern, kiln-dried, fast-growth lumber. Dr. Frear noted this in his 1897 bulletin specifically. Old-growth framing acts as a natural amplifier for the copper grounding effect. The resins in aged wood conduct the microcurrent along the entire stud, turning each wall into an extended drainage field. Modern construction, with its engineered lumber and synthetic sheathing, partially blocks this effect. That's why so many new homes have persistent mold problems despite all their vapor barriers and mechanical ventilation. They are electrically dead. Your old house, the one you've been fighting for decades, is actually the ideal candidate for this technique. Think about what that means. Every advantage the building industry tells you a new house has over yours. It's wrong. Your old bones, your real wood, your imperfect walls, they are not the problem. They are the solution, waiting to be activated. Now, I promised you something at the beginning, a technique buried so deep in the historical record that almost nobody has seen it. This is it. In the 1897 Frear Bulletin, on page 43, there is a small illustration most readers skipped past. It shows the copper ground wire, but wrapped around the wire at 12-inch intervals are small bundles of a specific material. Frear identified it as charred oak bark loosely bound. He noted that installations using this addition showed near total suppression of spore germination compared to copper alone. I had no idea what that meant until I asked an 89-year-old Amish bishop in Lancaster County about it. He laughed. Then he took me out to his woodshed and showed me a shelf of what looked like black, crumbly chunks. Oak bark, harvested in early spring when the sap is rising, then charred slowly over a low wood fire until it turns into something between charcoal and activated carbon. He called it Die Schwarz Kohl, the black coal. His family has been making it for 6 generations. You wrap small fistfuls of this charred bark in cheesecloth, and you tie those bundles along your copper wire every 12 inches. The charred oak is intensely porous and highly conductive when combined with the copper ground. It creates what Frear called a biological scavenger field. Not only does the copper prevent electrical conditions for mold, the charred bark actively absorbs airborne spores from within a 6-foot radius, pulling them out of the air and neutralizing them through the grounding path. You can make it yourself. Take oak bark from a fallen oak, not a living tree, break it into pieces the size of your palm, and slow cook it in a covered metal bucket over a low fire for about 4 hours. You want it black all the way through, brittle, but not ashy. Store it dry. One batch lasts you 5 years. Total cost of the finale version of this technique, copper wire plus grounding rod plus homemade charred oak, under $40 for a whole house installation that eliminates mold permanently. $40 once. For the rest of the time, you own the house. Compare that to what you have already spent fighting this problem. Compare that to what the remediation companies charge. Compare that to the air purifiers sitting in your closet, collecting dust of their own. This is what they took from you. Not a product, not a gadget, a piece of common knowledge that belonged to every German and Swiss farmer who settled this country, written down by a Pennsylvania scientist in 1897, confirmed by Cornell in 2011, and kept alive by a few thousand Amish families who never stopped practicing it. You are not crazy for feeling like something was hidden. Something was. And now it isn't. If you are the kind of man who believes that real solutions were quietly pushed aside so someone else could keep sending you bills, you already know what to do with what you just learned. I want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me this. Which room in your house has been fighting mold the longest? The bathroom, the basement, or that one corner nobody can explain? Write it below. I read every single one, and I'm putting together the next video based on what you tell me. And if you want to keep recovering the knowledge that was taken from ordinary homeowners like us, subscribe. There's a movement of us doing this now, one forgotten technique at a time. The next video is about a single handful of wood ash the Amish add to their well water every spring, and what it does to lead, copper, and bacteria would get a chemist fired for saying out loud. I'll see you there.